Imagine you're living in a house, like a totally normal house.
Right.
The roof doesn't leak, the doors lock securely, and, I mean, from the outside, the paint isn't even peeling.
Sounds like a nice place.
Yeah, to the naked eye, it looks perfectly fine, but beneath the floorboards, in those dark spaces you never check, there's an invisible army of termites.
Ugh, the worst.
And they've just been quietly eating the foundational beams for, well, 140 years.
That is a long time for termites.
Right, and today's source material actually claims that you are living in that exact house right now.
Oh, wow.
Only the termites aren't insects. They're bureaucrats.
I see.
Yeah, and they aren't eating wood. They are literally eating the structural integrity of your society.
I mean, that is a profound and just deeply unsettling architectural metaphor.
It really is.
Because when a house falls to termites, it doesn't happen with, like, a massive explosion.
Right, there's no bomb.
Exactly. It just happens on a random Tuesday when someone steps on a floorboard and the entire structure simply gives way.
Because it's been hollowed out from the inside.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us for what is going to be a seriously fascinating exploration.
It really is.
Today, our mission is to unpack a highly detailed, intensely provocative YouTube interview. It's a transcript from the Winston Marshall channel.
Right, featuring legal commentator Stephen Barrett.
Exactly. And he lays out this sprawling, frankly astonishing theory about a 140-year-old think tank. They're called the Fabian Society.
The Fabian Society.
According to Barrett, the philosophy born in this society has systematically dismantled the British Constitution.
Wow.
Yeah, the legal system, and even like the basic everyday societal norms of the UK.
So before we plunge into the actual mechanics of this theory, we really need to establish exactly how we are approaching this material.
Yes, very important.
Because the source text we are analyzing today contains some highly charged, explicit political viewpoints.
Extremely charged.
Yeah, Barrett offers some severe, unvarnished critiques of current UK leadership, specifically including Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Right.
And he also provides very blunt commentary on deeply sensitive social issues, like ranging from diversity, equity, and inclusion mandates to the 2024 Southport riots.
He does not hold back.
He really doesn't.
Yeah.
So I want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that this deep dive is not endorsing, validating, or taking sides on any of these political positions.
Left or right.
Exactly, whether they lean left or right. Our goal here is strictly analytical. We are just neutrally reporting, deconstructing, and trying to understand the specific worldview being presented by Stephen Barrett in this source text.
Exactly. We are putting on our analytical hard hats and just walking through the blueprint of this theory to see how the walls are supposedly built.
Right.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because Barrett doesn't just start with modern-day headlines. He forces us to go all the way back to 1884.
That's quite a jump.
Right. So, according to this text, what exactly is the Fabian Society, and, like, why are we talking about them?
Well, according to Barrett's historical framework, the Fabian Society was founded in London in 1884, and it began as a socialist think tank.
Okay, a think tank.
Yeah. But what makes them uniquely dangerous in Barrett's eyes isn't just their end goal of a socialist state, it's actually their specific methodology.
How they do it.
Exactly. They are fundamentally dedicated to a concept called gradualism.
Gradualism.
Yeah. And to understand gradualism, you have to look at where they got their name. I mean, this is incredibly revealing.
Where did they get it?
They named themselves after Quintus Fabius Maximus.
Oh, right, the Roman general, the guy who fought Hannibal.
Exactly. So Fabius Maximus was facing Hannibal of Carthage. And Hannibal was, arguably one of the greatest military tacticians in history.
Right, he brought elephants over the Alps.
Yeah, exactly. And Hannibal wanted massive, decisive, head-on battles. But Fabius realized that fighting Hannibal directly was basically suicide.
Because he'd lose.
Right. So he developed a completely different strategy. He used tactical retreats. He used delay tactics.
Like just running away?
Yeah, well, more like avoiding the main army, attacking the supply lines, and just exhausting the enemy. Slowly, painstakingly, draining their resources over years.
Until they were weak enough to collapse on their own.
Yes. It's the ultimate war of attrition.
It's death by 1,000 cuts rather than, a single sword swing.
Precisely. And Barrett points out that this is the core animating principle of the Fabian Society.
Okay.
Their philosophy dictates that you do not overthrow the capitalist system or the constitutional monarchy overnight. You don't do it with a violent, bloody revolution.
Because that's too obvious.
Right. And it invites massive resistance. Instead, you gradually, persistently change the system from within. You alter a rule here, a regulation there.
Until the original system just stops functioning entirely.
Exactly. And your new system is already in place.
And Barrett highlights their original logo, which honestly is jarring when you think about how political organizations usually brand themselves.
Oh, the logo, yes.
Like, they usually want to look noble, right?
Mhm.
The original logo of the Fabian Society was literally a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Which is pretty brazen.
It really is. He brings up C.S. Lewis and various biblical references to underline just how openly sinister this imagery is. Like, Jesus warned of wolves in sheep's clothing.
Right.
Shakespeare wrote, fair is foul and foul is fair.
Yeah.
And Barrett is suggesting that this isn't just some clever, edgy metaphor from the 1880s. It's an outright admission of their core tactic, which is deception.
And that deception requires a very specific psychological driver.
What do you mean?
Well, Barrett argues that Fabianism and the modern bureaucratic systems it spawned, they aren't actually born from a pure, high-minded intellectual desire to help the poor.
Or create absolute equality, right?
Right. He believes they are rooted in a much darker, much more primal human emotion, which is envy.
The envy aspect really caught my attention when I read the transcript. It changes the entire motive.
It does.
But how exactly does envy translate into building, sprawling government bureaucracies? What's the mechanism there?
It's a great question. Barrett frames envy not just as a fleeting feeling of jealousy, like, wanting your neighbor's new car.
Right.
But as a consuming psychological state that fundamentally unbalances a person.
Okay.
And to illustrate this, he shares this really profound anecdote from a Hasidic Jewish text.
Oh, I loved this part.
It's so good. He says, a truly wise person carries two pieces of paper, one in each pocket. In the right pocket, the paper says, God created the universe for me.
Okay.
And in the left pocket, the paper says, I am but dust and ashes.
So you have to hold both of those extreme realities simultaneously, like your immense cosmic value and your complete, utter insignificance.
Exactly. It's all about spiritual and psychological balance. When you are feeling too arrogant, you reach into the left pocket.
To remember you are dust.
Right. And when you are feeling crushed by the world, you reach into the right pocket to remember you have divine worth.
That's beautiful, but how does that connect to the Fabians?
Well, Barrett claims that the Fabians, and really anyone driven by this gradualist ideology, they completely fail to find this balance.
Because they're consumed by envy.
Right. Because they're driven by envy of what others have, whether that's wealth, status, or traditional authority. They pinball emotionally between those two pockets.
Oh, I see.
One minute, they suffer from a fragile, crushing sense of inadequacy, feeling like dust.
Yeah.
The next minute, to compensate for that inadequacy, they swing to a grandiose, arrogant desire to control everyone else's lives, acting as if the universe was made for them to manage.
Wow.
Yeah, they cannot handle the paradox of human existence internally, so they seek to impose these rigid, obsessive systems of control on everyone else, just to soothe their own internal chaos.
Which brings us to a really fun, but deeply accurate framework he uses in the interview.
The D&D thing.
Yes. To explain how this envious desire for control actually manifests in the real world, he dips into Dungeons and Dragons alignments.
It's a brilliant way to categorize human behavior, honestly.
It really is. He says you have to understand that the Fabians are not chaotic evil.
Right.
Like, if you think of Lord of the Rings, they aren't the Balrog. A creature of pure fire, rage, and destruction that just smashes the bridge in Moria and kills everything in its path.
Right. Chaotic evil is obvious. A Balrog roars. It brings fire. You see it coming.
Makes you run or you fight.
Exactly. It's terrifying, but it's straightforward.
Right. But Barrett says Fabians are lawful evil.
Lawful evil.
Yeah. They are like Sauron in his early days when he was tricking the elves into forging the rings. Or, more relatably in our modern world, a petty, small-town bureaucrat.
Oh, we all know one of those.
Right. Lawful evil doesn't break the law to hurt you. It uses the rules, the regulations, and the systems themselves to quietly execute bad things.
Yeah, it's the hospital administrator who refuses to let you see your dying relative because you don't have the correct wristband, and visiting hours ended 2 minutes ago.
Exactly. They aren't breaking the rules. They are using the rules as a weapon.
It is the weaponization of process against the individual.
This goes right back to the analogy we opened with. It's the difference between a tornado and a termite infestation.
Yes, perfectly.
A tornado is chaotic evil. It's loud, it rips the roof off the house instantly, and everyone in town knows a tornado just hit.
Right.
Termites are lawful evil. They use the actual structural rules of the house, the grain of the wood, the framing, the dark spaces to eat it from the inside out.
And you don't even know they are there until the floorboards collapse under your feet.
Exactly.
That perfectly encapsulates Barrett's argument about gradualism. The structure looks completely intact from the outside, but its load-bearing integrity has been entirely hollowed out.
But I want to push back on this just to, play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Let's look at this pragmatically. If the Fabian Society is ultimately just a think tank, a group of highly educated people publishing white papers on voting reform or environmental regulation or accountability, aren't they just participating in the democratic marketplace of ideas?
That's a fair question.
Like, people can read their papers, voters can elect politicians who agree with them, or society can just ignore them.
Yeah.
Where is the evil, lawful or otherwise, in writing policy papers?
That is exactly the defense that is usually mounted, and Barrett addresses it head-on.
What does he say?
He argues that if they simply stood up in the public square and stated, hey, we are hardline socialists, our goal, the eradication of traditional British institutions, and the restructuring of society into a bureaucratic state.
Right, if they just said that.
Then it would indeed be a fair fight in the marketplace of ideas. Voters could look at that platform and say yes or no.
Yeah.
The danger, in his view, lies entirely in the deception. The wolf in sheep's clothing.
So the label on the tin doesn't match the ingredients inside.
Precisely. They don't announce their true intentions. They claim to be moderate social democrats.
Oh, I see.
They use language that sounds universally beneficial. Phrases like increasing regional accountability or empowering marginalized communities.
We're modernizing the Constitution.
Exactly. But the actual hidden mechanics of the policies they draft achieve the exact opposite. They consolidate power away from elected officials and into the hands of unelected regulators.
There are a termite infestation presenting itself as a home renovation company.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And Barrett argues that the first major structural system they successfully attacked using this deceptive method was the foundational architecture of the United Kingdom itself.
The British Constitution.
Yes.
And this was the part of the transcript where I literally had to stop and reread it 3 times.
It's definitely a paradigm shift.
Because Barrett challenges something that almost everyone in the Western world takes as an absolute foundational given. He asserts that the United Kingdom does not have a separation of powers.
Yeah.
He calls it a complete historical myth.
Yes. For any listener who grew up in the American educational system, or really most Western democracies, the separation of powers, executive, legislative, judicial, is treated like gravity.
Right. It's just how free societies work.
But Barrett traces this myth back to the French philosopher Montesquieu in the 18th century.
Right, the guy who wrote The Spirit of the Laws.
Exactly. According to Barrett, Montesquieu came to England, observed the system, and totally misunderstood how the unwritten English Constitution actually worked.
He just got it wrong.
Yeah, and then he took his flawed, romanticized understanding to America, where it heavily influenced the drafting of the U.S. Constitution.
Wow.
But Barrett insists that in the U.K., separation of powers is, as he calls it, tosh. It simply doesn't exist.
Okay, wait.
The executive branch, the prime minister and the cabinet, literally sits inside the legislature. They are members of parliament.
Right, I always forget that.
And historically, the highest judge in the land sat right in the middle of the government, too.
I am struggling to understand this. If the UK doesn't have a separation of powers to keep tyranny in check, like, what actually holds the system together?
That's a good question.
How did they become one of the most stable democracies in the world without it?
So Barrett cites the famous Victorian constitutional scholar A.V. Dicey to explain this.
I see, okay.
Dicey argued that the UK Constitution doesn't rely on neat, separated boxes. Instead, it relies on 2 massive, overlapping pillars.
Which are?
The rule of law and the supremacy of Parliament.
Can you break down what supremacy of Parliament actually means in practice?
It means that whatever Parliament decides is the law, full stop.
Really?
Yes. In the U.S., if Congress passes a law, the Supreme Court can strike it down as unconstitutional.
Right, that happens all the time.
But in the traditional UK system, there is no higher authority than Parliament. No court can strike down an act of Parliament.
That sounds dangerous.
It's a delicate, complex balance, and it relies heavily on historical convention, tradition, and a very specific structuring of internal incentives.
Okay, so enter Prime Minister Tony Blair's 2005 constitutional reforms.
Yes, this is where it all changes.
Barrett does not mince words here.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't view this as a modernization effort. He calls it vandalism with a hammer.
Strong words.
Very. He says, I'm reforming my car with a hammer. He specifically targets the removal of the traditional powers of the Lord Chancellor and the creation of the UK Supreme Court.
To understand why Barrett is so angry about this, we have to deeply explore the role of the Lord Chancellor.
Okay, let's do it.
Under the old system, pre-2005, the Lord Chancellor was an incredibly unique figure. They were a political appointee, a member of the cabinet, but they were also the head of the judiciary.
Wait.
And they paradoxically controlled all judicial appointments.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and a bit counterintuitive.
Oh, totally.
You would think that having a partisan politician in charge of picking judges would make the entire court system hyper-political, right?
That is the logical assumption.
Like they would just pack the courts with their cronies.
It seems completely intuitive that it would fail. But Barrett argues it was a piece of accidental genius that actually forced the exact opposite effect.
How?
Walk through the timeline with me. Imagine you are a brilliant, ambitious 25-year-old barrister in London.
Okay, I'm 25. I'm brilliant.
Your lifelong dream is to become a high-level judge. You know that 20 or 25 years from now, when you are finally senior enough to be considered for that promotion, the person who will literally hand you the job is the Lord Chancellor.
Okay, I'm with you.
But here's the catch that makes the whole system work. As a 25-year-old, you have absolutely no idea if a conservative Lord Chancellor or a Labour Lord Chancellor will be in power in 25 years.
Oh, because politics changes too fast.
Exactly.
Oh, I see the mechanism now. Because you don't know which political wind will be blowing when your time comes, your only safe play is to keep your mouth completely shut.
Exactly. It enforces a profound omerta. You remain entirely apolitical.
That is brilliant.
You don't mouth off on political issues, you don't join radical causes, you don't write controversial op-eds.
Because it could come back to haunt you.
Right. You focus entirely, 100%, on being the absolute best legal mind possible. Because showing any political bias could alienate the future Lord Chancellor, whoever they might be.
Wow.
The system, precisely by putting a politician at the top of an unpredictable timeline, forced everyone below them to be fiercely, militantly neutral.
That is a fascinating psychological mechanism.
Yeah, isn't it?
So by trying to modernize the Constitution in 2005, by trying to create a true separation of powers and removing the Lord Chancellor's power over appointments to make the UK look more like the American system, Barrett argues they accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, politicized the entire legal profession.
Yes.
They removed the specific incentive structure that forced neutrality.
By creating independent judicial appointment commissions, they removed the fear of the unknown politician.
Right.
And the systemic shift from a neutral, apolitical environment where only your legal skill mattered to a highly politicized, status-driven environment had devastating real-world consequences.
They're individuals inside the system.
Yes. Which brings us to Stephen Barrett's own deeply personal and quite shocking story within this text.
Right. The interview transitions from abstract constitutional theory into a very intense personal narrative.
It gets very real.
Yeah, Barrett claims that following the 2024 Southport riots in the UK, he was effectively forced to resign from Radcliffe Chambers.
Which is a prestigious group of lawyers.
Exactly. And completely abandon his career as an independent barrister. And according to him, the catalyst for his career ending was a completely innocuous tweet.
A tweet.
Yeah, where he simply stated that the police were trying to manage a difficult riot situation.
And he notes very carefully that official government advisors and mainstream media commentators were saying the exact same thing about the police on the same day.
Without any professional consequence.
Right. But Barrett alleges the tweet was merely a convenient pretext.
So what was the real reason?
The real reason he was forced out, he claims, was his long-standing, steadfast refusal to submit to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, mandates, combined with his willingness to publicly speak out against what he views as a captured legal system. Because of this, he became the target of a constant, coordinated, left-wing mob attack via social media.
And to explain how a Twitter mob can actually destroy a lawyer's career, he makes a really fascinating comparison between American lawyers and British lawyers.
This is super interesting.
He says American lawyers are fundamentally money-motivated. They are controlled by the capitalist free market.
Right.
If an American lawyer has controversial politics, but they win cases and make their clients money, they will succeed. The market protects them.
Yeah, clients just care about winning.
Exactly. But British lawyers, he argues, are entirely status motivated.
Instead, it's motivated.
They don't just want money. They want to ascend a very rigid hierarchy. They want a King's Council appointment. They want to become a judge. They want a knighthood.
We should probably explain what a King's Council or KC actually is, because it's vital to understanding his point.
Yeah, what is it?
It's not just a fancy certificate you hang on your wall. Becoming a KC, which they call taking silk because you get to wear a special silk gown, is the ultimate marker of elite status in the UK legal profession.
Like reaching the top of the mountain.
Exactly. It allows you to charge exponentially higher fees, it gives you access to the most complex cases, and it is almost always a prerequisite for becoming a high court judge.
It is the golden ticket.
It really is.
And this is the critical distinction in Barrett's framework. Because UK lawyers so deeply crave that specific status within a rigid hierarchy, if you can capture the mechanism that grants that status, you effectively capture the entire profession.
You have them by the throat.
Exactly. And Barrett argues that the Fabian-minded bureaucrats did exactly this. By weaving DEI requirements and specific ideological commitments into the application process for King's Council and judicial appointments, they ensured a complete choke point.
It's a purity test. He is arguing that no matter how brilliant a legal mind you are, you cannot rise to the top of the UK legal profession unless you outwardly conform to and actively promote a specific political ideology.
If you don't nod along with the diversity mandates, your career simply stalls out. You will never get the silk gown.
Exactly.
But the text shows it goes even deeper than just denying promotions. He details the literal weaponization of the regulatory system itself.
This part is terrifying.
It is. He describes how the rules for regulating lawyers were subtly changed so that anyone, not just a former client, not just a judge, not even someone who has ever met the lawyer, but completely anonymous people on the internet, can file formal professional complaints against a barrister.
And he describes the agonizing reality of this system. He says he would receive weekly PDFs on Friday afternoons from his regulator.
Weekly.
And these PDFs contain lists of formal complaints filed against him by people who were whipped into an ideological frenzy on Twitter.
Over a tweet.
Yeah. Now, Barrett notes that these complaints were almost routinely dismissed because they had no legal merit. Like, he was functioning perfectly well as a lawyer for his actual clients.
So what's the point?
The administrative process itself became the punishment.
Oh, wow.
The sheer psychological toll of having your livelihood constantly investigated, of having your career constantly threatened by an anonymous mob, is staggering.
I want to pause here. I want you, listening to this right now, to apply this to your own life.
Yeah, think about this.
Imagine if your career wasn't judged by the quality of your work, or by your boss, or by your actual clients. Imagine it was judged by a distant regulatory body that fielded endless, anonymous internet complaints from strangers who simply didn't like your politics or a joke you made online.
It's a nightmare scenario.
Imagine getting a 50-page PDF every Friday afternoon that could theoretically result in you losing your license to work. How long could you withstand that kind of psychological pressure?
Most people would break.
It's not designed to regulate you. It's designed to grind you down until you quit.
And according to the source material, this weaponization of bureaucracy isn't a flaw in the system. It's the intended feature.
It's working as designed.
Right. And it isn't limited to the legal field. Barrett believes this is the hallmark of all Fabian-designed systems across the board.
Everywhere.
Yeah, they are inherently designed to break down traditional accountability and weaponize the process itself against dissenters.
Which naturally leads us to ask, how do you even fight a system like that?
It's tough.
If the rules are designed to confuse and exhaust you, how do you analyze it? Barrett offers what I think is one of the most useful mental models in the entire interview.
The heuristic.
Yes, he calls it his ultimate heuristic for analyzing Fabian policies. He says, when you are looking at these massive, failing government initiatives, do not get bogged down in arguing the technical minutia.
Don't argue the details.
Right. Apply a dual test. When they implement a new system and it fails miserably, you simply conclude the architects are either well-meaning but incredibly stupid, or they are malicious.
The stupid or malicious test.
Yeah.
It's incredibly potent because it violently cuts through the dense fog of political rhetoric and expert jargon.
Let's unpack some of the specific examples he uses in the text to prove this test works. First, he points to devolution.
Right, devolution.
For those who might not know, devolution was the process in the UK of transferring power away from the central government in London out to regional governments like Scotland, Wales, and various mayors.
Okay.
Barrett looks at a specific example. Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, attempting to move operations of the Prime Minister's office, number 10 Downing Street, up to Manchester for part of the week.
And Barrett applies the test here. He argues there is zero positive functional outcome to moving the Prime Minister's office back and forth across the country.
I know that sounds exhausting.
It creates massive logistical inefficiency. It costs a fortune in taxpayer money.
Yeah.
It creates severe security risks when highly sensitive intelligence documents have to be shuttled on trains or planes.
So what's his conclusion?
He says, look at this broken idea. The people who proposed it are either too stupid to understand basic logistics, or they are maliciously trying to weaken the central authority of the state.
Right. He applies the same lens to the Scottish Parliament.
Oh, this is a good one.
The promise of devolution was that a local parliament in Edinburgh would be more accountable to the Scottish people. But Barrett points out a critical flaw.
What's the law?
Scotland lacks a robust, independent national press scaled to scrutinize that parliament effectively.
Right, because most major media is centralized in London.
Exactly. So by creating a parliament without a dedicated press corps to watch it, accountability wasn't increased. It was effectively destroyed under the pleasant-sounding guise of, empowering the regions.
And he even takes this test into the realm of foreign policy, specifically discussing the Chagos Islands.
Right.
To give some brief context, the Chagos Islands are a territory in the Indian Ocean that the UK has controlled for a long time. And it houses Diego Garcia, which is a massively important joint UK-US military base.
Very important base.
Recently, the UK government agreed to hand sovereignty of these islands over to Mauritius.
And Barrett views this as absolute madness, right?
Total madness. He views this decision as being driven entirely by an anti-British, anti-Western decolonization ideology.
Okay.
He argues it sacrifices vital national security and geopolitical leverage and, ironically, ignores the actual wishes of the Chagosan people themselves.
So he applies the test.
Right. He looks at the policy and says, handing over a strategic military asset to satisfy an academic theory is either profoundly stupid statecraft or it's a malicious attempt to weaken the West.
He also applies this aggressively to the justice system, claiming the UK is witnessing the rise of a two-tiered justice system.
Two-tier justice.
Yeah, he compares two specific sentences to make his point.
Yeah.
He points to a 31-month prison sentence handed down to a woman named Lucy Connolly over a deleted, albeit offensive, tweet during the riots.
Okay.
He then compares that to a 16-month sentence given to an actual human trafficker. Yeah, he sees this glaring disparity not as a clerical error, but as proof of a captured, ideologically driven system that punishes ideological enemies harsher than actual violent criminals.
But importantly, he also highlights moments where the traditional system fights back.
Oh, like the judge.
Yes, he strongly praises a judge named Justice Goose.
Justice Goose.
During a trial, a convicted murderer named Axel Rudakubana refused to leave his cell to face the court.
Right.
Instead of tolerating this defiance, Justice Goose ordered the guards to physically force him into the courtroom dock.
Why was that moment so significant to Barrett?
Because that moment represents the old system, the actual rule of law asserting itself. It was the judge saying, no, you do not have the power here, the court does.
We won't be bullied.
Exactly. We will not negotiate with a murderer. We will enforce the law. It was a rejection of the gradualist softening of the system.
Right.
But coming back to the stupid or malicious test, the real tactical advantage of this heuristic is that it prevents the opposition from using distraction tactics.
It stops you from getting trapped in their maze.
Exactly. If a bureaucrat implements a broken system, Barrett says, don't sit there and argue with them about why they thought their white paper was a good idea.
Right. Don't debate their sociology.
Just say, the system is broken, you are either completely incompetent or you are intentionally destroying things. Which is it.
It forces accountability squarely onto the outcome, rather than allowing them to hide behind their noble intent.
Precisely.
And speaking of hiding, he makes a brilliant point about how these laws are actually constructed to prevent you from challenging them. He calls it boredom as a control technique.
Boredom as a control technique. I love that phrasing.
He mentions trying to read recent legislation like the Online Safety Act. Now, how does boredom actually function as a mechanism of control?
Well, it's not just that the laws are dry.
Right.
It's that they are drafted to be so intensely long, so densely packed with cross-references and bureaucratic legalese, that normal, rational citizens simply give up.
You try to read a 500-page bill, your eyes glaze over by page 3, and you decide you have better things to do with your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because you give up, you outsource your thinking to the experts. The politicians don't even read the bills. They rely on NGOs and think tanks to write the executive summaries.
And if those NGOs and experts are already captured by that status-driven, ideologically rigid system we talked about earlier, well, the trap closes.
Yep.
The bureaucrats essentially write the law, pass the law, and enforce the law, all while the public is too bored to notice.
It's the termite infestation again. The legislative language is so complex and opaque that you can't even see the structural wood they're eating through.
It's crazy.
But Barrett argues this gradualist ideology hasn't just seeped into government and law. If you can train a society to prioritize emotional compliance over objective rules in the courtroom, you've softened them up for the exact same takeover in their cultural institutions.
Yeah, this is where the deep dive gets really profound, because we have to follow his logic from the political realm into the cultural one. He talks about the cultural creep of this Fabian mindset. He points specifically to the Church of England, an institution he clearly cares deeply about, claiming it has been entirely captured by this ideology.
He cites several examples to prove this capture. He points to the church establishing funds to pay reparations for the sins of the father regarding historical slavery.
Okay.
He points to Anglican bishops literally taking the knee in political solidarity after the death of George Floyd in America.
Wow.
And he heavily criticizes the church for spending massive amounts of money and focus on net zero climate initiatives, while local historic parish buildings literally fall into disrepair because they lack funding for basic maintenance.
He sees this as an abandonment of absolute transcendent moral codes in favor of cheap temporal political grandstanding.
Exactly.
But he tracks a broader secular societal shift back to a very specific moment in time, the death of Princess Diana in 1997.
This is a really fascinating connection.
Barrett argues that this was the exact inflection point where the UK officially abandoned the traditional stiff upper lip in favor of public emotional dysregulation.
He notes that it was a Fabian Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who coined the phrase the people's princess and actively encouraged this unprecedented public wailing and crying.
Right.
And Barrett makes a really sharp, devastating psychological point here about the cost of that shift. He says adults refusing to regulate their emotions in public actively harms children.
Because children rely on stable, stoic, predictable adults to feel safe in a chaotic world.
Exactly. When the adults are performing their trauma in the streets, the children are left entirely untethered.
It ties perfectly back to his earlier point about envy and the inability to balance one's emotions, like the two pieces of paper in the pocket.
Yes, the Hasidic text.
Right. If a society is actively encouraged to be emotionally dysregulated, it becomes much easier for a bureaucratic state to control them through rolling cycles of panic and outrage.
And if we want to talk about controlling populations through panic, we have to examine Barrett's environmental angle.
Oh, the net zero stuff.
Yes. Barrett frames modern net zero carbon policies not as necessary environmental protection, but as a deeply sinister Malthusian ideology.
For those who might not remember 19th century economics, Malthusian refers to Thomas Malthus. He believed that human population growth would inevitably outpace the Earth's resources, leading to mass starvation and disaster.
Right.
Therefore, Malthusians believe population must be strictly controlled or preferably reduce.
Exactly. And Barrett's logic regarding net zero is incredibly stark. Walk through the mechanism with me.
Yeah.
Every single human being, by simply existing, breathes out carbon dioxide. Our agriculture produces carbon. Our heating produces carbon.
We are carbon emitters.
Right. So if your foundational, unquestionable governmental policy is the aggressive elimination of CO2, then your ultimate unspoken goal has to be the elimination of the source of the CO2.
Which is humans.
Exactly. It is, at its core, fundamentally anti-human.
To back up this dark assertion, he references a historical video of George Bernard Shaw.
This was wild.
Now, Shaw was a famous playwright. He wrote Pygmalion, but he was also a prominent founding member of the Fabian Society.
Right.
In this historical clip, Shaw essentially suggests, with a terrifyingly calm demeanor, that people should be required to appear before a state committee every 5 years.
A committee.
Yes. The purpose: To justify their own existence.
Justify their existence.
To prove to the bureaucrats that they are producing more for society than they consume. And if they can't prove their worth to the committee's satisfaction, Shaw suggests they should be put to death.
It's a chilling piece of tape.
Yeah.
And it perfectly illustrates Barrett's absolute terror of the lawful, evil bureaucrat.
Yeah.
A person who will decide who lives and dies not in a fit of rage, but based on a utilitarian spreadsheet and a cost-benefit analysis of carbon output.
Now, I want to take a quick textual interlude here because as I was reading this transcript, I found this fascinating, almost surreal artifact of modern media buried right in the middle of this intense dystopian conversation.
The ad read.
Right. Right after Barrett and the host are discussing the potential collapse of the Church of England and the creeping threat of Marxist ideology, there is a sudden, jarring sponsor read for a supplement called Black Forest NMN.
Yes, an NAD plus anti-aging cellular health supplement.
Right. And the ad copy explicitly states that the FDA, the ultimate state bureaucrats, tried to regulate the supplement and put it exclusively in the hands of Big Pharma.
Right.
But the ad proudly claims the people fought back against the FDA and kept it accessible to the public.
The irony here is just delicious.
You have a deeply philosophical, hour-long conversation about resisting passive-aggressive state control and bureaucratic overreach, and it is interrupted by an ad for a biohacking supplement that is literally fighting government regulation at the cellular level.
It's a perfect, unscripted microcosm of the whole interview.
It really is a brilliant collision of content and commerce.
And if we tie all these cultural shifts together, the capture of the church, the promotion of emotional dysregulation, the Malthusian net zero policies, Barrett argues they're all serving a single purpose.
Which is?
The Fabians are attempting to replace the traditional concept of absolute equality with a hierarchy of identities.
This goes back to the DEI initiatives we discussed in the legal profession.
Exactly. In the traditional system, everyone is equal under God, or at least equal under the rule of law. But in this new system, people are ranked and sorted by their perceived victimhood, or their race, or their compliance with environmental edicts.
Right.
But ultimately, Barrett believes this entire hierarchy of identities is just a smokescreen. The true final goal is to establish the Fabians, the bureaucrats themselves, as a special, superior, untouchable class.
He points to the UK's discussions around implementing digital IDs to prove this point. He notes a specific proposal where these digital IDs, which would track your data and limit your access to services, would be strictly required for normal, everyday citizens.
Okay.
But, and here's the kicker, VIPs, high-level politicians, and the elite class would be completely exempt from having to use them.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Precisely. It reveals the core hypocrisy of the entire endeavor. They don't want equality. They want to be the new aristocrats, waving happily as they pass through the digital gates, while the commoners are forced to show their papers to buy a train ticket.
It's bleak.
So what does this all mean? We've painted this incredibly bleak, claustrophobic picture based on Barrett's testimony.
We really have.
The legal system is captured by status seekers, the Constitution has been vandalized with a hammer, the culture is emotionally dysregulated, and the entire bureaucracy is run by lawful evil termites obsessed with carbon.
It's a lot to take in.
If a listener accepts even a fraction of this premise that the institutions we rely on are rotting from the inside out, how are they supposed to navigate the world? What is Stephen Barrett's proposed remedy? Like, how do ordinary people actually fight back against a termite infestation?
Barrett doesn't advocate for despair, which is actually surprising given his analysis.
Right.
Instead, he turns to a very specific set of historical and literary models for resistance. First, he uses J.R.R. Tolkien.
Tolkien again.
Yeah, he warns against being a tinkerer or acting like a hobbit who just wants to retreat, smoke a pipe, and hide in the Shire, pretending the outside world isn't on fire.
You can't just hide.
Right. He references Winston Churchill, stating clearly the war is coming, meaning a massive cultural and political clash, and one must mentally and practically prepare for it.
Ignoring the Fabians will not make them go away.
It only gives them more time to eat the wood.
But he has actual structural solutions too, right?
Yeah.
It isn't just a call for a change in attitude.
No, he is very specific about the mechanics of dismantling this. He says you have to rip out the unnecessary regulators.
Like who?
He specifically names Ofcom, which is the UK's communications regulator, similar to the FCC in the US, and the Electoral Commission.
Why target those specific bodies?
Because Barrett views them as broken, captured systems that exist primarily to shield politicians from democratic blame.
Oh, I see.
If a controversial media policy is passed, The prime minister can say, well, OFCOM recommended it, it's out of my hands.
Passing the buck.
Exactly. Barrett's solution is to dismantle these supposedly independent bodies entirely and return the decision-making power and therefore the direct accountability to elected ministers.
So if a minister makes a bad call on media regulation, they can't hide behind a quango.
Right. The public can directly vote them out of office at the next election. You must restore the direct link of accountability that the gradualists supposedly severed.
But the most striking solution he offers isn't structural, it's social.
Yes.
He says we need to collectively adopt a Victorian mindset. Now, when most listeners think of Victorians, they think of repression, tight corsets, and strict manners.
Right.
But Barrett highlights their immense physical courage in the face of intense political violence. He points out that the Victorians lived through actual assassination attempts on Queen Victoria and various prime ministers.
They did it.
They saw the bloody chaos of the French Revolution happening right next door. Yet, despite all that terror, they adamantly refused to build gated communities. They didn't put massive steel barricades around Downing Street.
And this ties directly back to his concept of true equality. He says the Victorians understood a fundamental truth. If the elite wall themselves off behind security gates, they lose touch with the public and society eventually burns.
Right.
True equality for Barrett isn't found in a DEI training seminar. It is found in the pews of a traditional church, where the rich aristocrat and the poor laborer walk through the exact same doors.
They kneel on the exact same floor at the exact same time.
Sing the exact same hymns, and are entirely equal before God. He argues we have to aggressively return to systems and rituals that enforce that shared transcended humanity rather than bureaucratic systems that slice us into competing hierarchies of identity.
He actually offers a very funny, highly specific deterrent for the future to keep this in check.
Oh, the plaque.
Yes. He suggests putting a portrait or a bust of Winston Churchill inside the foyer of number 10 Downing Street. But behind the bust, he wants a plaque installed.
And what does it say?
The plaque would read, if you are reading this plaque, the picture of Churchill has been removed, which means the Fabians have taken over.
That is hilarious.
It's a literal warning system for future generations to recognize when the termites are back in the building.
It's a humorous point, but it relies on a very deep, abiding trust in the British character. Despite all the pessimism, all the talk of capture and decay, Barrett is ultimately hopeful.
He is.
And he uses a brilliant metaphor here. He compares the British public to an exploding doormat.
An exploding doormat. What does that actually mean functionally? Are we talking about civil unrest or just voting out the government?
He means it in terms of democratic pushback. A doormat just sits there. It takes the mud. It takes the heavy boots. It lets people wipe their feet on it day after day.
Right.
The Fabians think the British public is just a regular doormat that will endlessly accept new regulations, new taxes, and new behavioral controls.
But they aren't?
No. Barrett says because of their specific history, the British doormat doesn't just wear out aside. It eventually detonates. They will endure an astonishing amount of passive-aggressive control, but eventually they hit a breaking point.
And they push back fiercely and decisively at the ballot box and in the culture.
Exactly.
To survive and stay sane until that pushback happens, he says you have to rely on absolute moral codes for him, obviously, it's his Christianity, to see through the fog of what he calls passive-aggressive tyranny.
Yes.
And this is the concept I want to focus on as we wrap up today's deep dive. Barrett talks about the vital importance of keeping a sense of smell.
A sense of smell.
Yeah. He references a character from the classic 1970s TV adaptation of I, Claudius. The character is being tortured to death by a tyrant. But his final defiant victory isn't fighting back physically.
That's what he says.
Right. It's looking the tyrant in the eye and saying, I always knew it was you. I had a sense of smell about you.
It's the ultimate reliance on basic, human, common sense, over-bloated, expert jargon.
Exactly.
If a policy smells wrong, if a government initiative seems inherently designed to fail, or if a corporate mandate seems designed solely to humiliate and control you, trust your instincts. Yeah. Don't let a 50-page PDF convince you that you are crazy.
Relying on your own common sense in a world desperate to overcomplicate everything is framed as the ultimate act of civic rebellion.
It really is.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with the tactical attrition-based retreats of a Roman general.
We did.
We analyzed the alleged vandalization of the British Constitution through the removal of the Lord Chancellor's emerita.
Yep.
We explored the capture of the legal profession via status anxiety and DEI mandates, and we ended up with a Victorian blueprint for resisting subtle bureaucratic tyranny by refusing to hide behind gates.
And I want to remind you, the listener, why a deep dive like this matters to your daily life.
Why does it matter?
You might vigorously disagree with every single political point Stephen Barrett made in this text. You might view his conclusions about the UK as entirely wrong.
Sure.
But the analytical framework he provides is universally applicable. The concept of lawful evil operating quietly through bureaucracy, the idea of using boredom as a control technique in policymaking, the stupid or malicious test for failed initiatives.
They are incredibly fascinating, potent lenses.
Yes, you can use them to view any modern bureaucracy you interact with, whether it's a massive government agency, a university administration, or just your own corporate HR department.
It fundamentally changes the way you look at the architecture of the rules around you. It makes you check the floorboards.
Definitely.
Which brings me to one final thought I want to leave you with today. Barrett argues that the Fabians design broken, controlling systems because they are secretly driven by a deeply unbalanced, hidden human emotion, envy.
Well,
It makes you wonder. Look at the systems, the rules, and the bureaucracies you interact with every single day at work, in your local zoning board, or in your community.
think about them.
If every system is a reflection of its creator's hidden psychology, what hidden emotions are quietly running your world?